Next, we're regulating the action. We set the key depth, rather I check the key depth by using a ruler to make sure that the total depth of the white keys is at 13 30/32 of an inch. I measured it and it was extremely close. If we needed to change the key depth, we would put shims under either the front rail or the center pin rail. I gotta check the manual, but it wasn't wrong, so I don't have to change it. Next, we set the hammer height. All the hammers need to be in a straight line. I had to change about 5 or 6 of them. They were all sharp keys, and the way that you change it is by taking the key out and turning the capstan screw. It's this screw in the end, and you need a capstan wrench to turn it. Some of them were too high, and so I turned the capstan screw down, or rather tightened it, to lower the screw, which means it lowers the height of the hammer. All the hammer butts always sit on top of the capstan screws. There is no lost motion in this piano. On later model of Wurlitzers, you have what's called lost motion, where there's a little gap between the capstan of the key and the hammer butt. That's not the case on this piano. The hammer butts are always resting on top of the capstans. With the hammer line straight, the next step is to adjust let off. Let off is when you play a note slowly, when you push a note down slowly. You watch the hammer, and I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit. You watch the hammer. Let's see, where is it? And it should get within about 1/8 of an inch of the reed before it drops back down. When that adjustment is incorrect, this is what happens. The hammer practically touches the reed, and it might never drop down. So there might be times where you're playing a note and the hammer blocks up against the reed and mutes it. So you want the let off to be set to about, on this piano, about 1/8 of an inch on the bass half and about 1/16 of an inch on the treble half. On later Wurlitzers, that's an easy adjustment with the same tool. Not so on this piano. These early Wurlitzers use these little tiny drop screws. They're called drop screws because they look kind of like inside out flathead screws. I'm going to try to shine a light down there and show you what they look like. You can kind of see that the tips of the screws are protruding, and there's sort of rectangular shapes, like a tiny, if you can imagine, it looks like the end of a flathead screwdriver, sort of. That's how you turn them. Ordinarily, to make this adjustment, you would use a tool like this. This is a tool sold by Shaft Piano. It's called a drop screw regulator. The problem is that that tip is too big. It won't turn those screws. I think I found the right tool, but it's gonna take too long to ship. And so this is what I came up with. I took a flathead screw and I drilled it into the end of a wooden dowel. It's not perfect, but it does get the job done. And I'll show you an example. This is the F sharp that I'm working on. It badly needs to have its let off adjusted because there's no let off. It's pretty much touching the reed before it drops. And so, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this on camera or not, but we have to sort of finesse it in between hammers and try not to, damage any hammers when I do that. There, I turned it a little more. Okay, it's looking better. So that's the let-off adjustment. Here's an example where let-off is so shallow that the hammer is blocking against the reed. It's just not letting go. And after the owner of this piano told me that he doesn't yet have a damper pedal. That's a sustain pedal. But he'd like one, and I have one, and so I'm gonna sell this one to him. But it needs to play nice with this piano. The Wurlitzer 112 and the Wurlitzer 120 service manuals do not describe any procedure for how to adjust the damper rod. Sure, you can adjust each of these individual dampers right here for dry playing. There's little regulator screws right here for that. But it does not tell you what to do about this rod. And the funny thing about this rod is that it's kind of adjustable. There's a one flathead screw back here that mounts it, and that hole is oval shaped, so there's play in it. You'll notice that if I were to loosen that one screw, I can move this rod up and down. It's like bendable. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that the rod is as straight as possible. And if it's bowing up in the middle, you probably are gonna want to loosen this screw and push it down a little bit and then tighten it so that the rod is as tight as possible. The other thing is, since we don't have any directions for adjusting this damper from the service manual, I'm going to rely on the directions from the 200 series service manual. And there is a nut on the bottom of the piano. You can see it down there. In the 200 series, that nut is a 7/16 nut, but on this one, it's a 1/2 inch nut. And this is how we adjust it. The reason we're adjusting it is to adjust the resting position of this rod. And the goal is that you want about 1/32 of an inch gap between the damper rod and the actual dampers themselves. And right now, I would say there's probably double that, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, almost an 1/8 of an inch. So first thing I'm going to do is tighten that 1/2 inch nut a little bit. And as I tighten it, here we go. Actually, yes, I'm tightening it. You can see it going down very gradually. Going down, going down, going down. Okay. You'll notice that as it's going down, it's beginning to touch some of these dampers. Only a few. Which one? Well, that one right there is making contact. None of the other ones are, just that one. Why is it doing that? Well, it's a little higher than it should be. What I'm gonna have to do is get my my long flathead and try to loosen the screw that holds this damper in, move it down a hair and straighten it out so that this rod isn't touching it anymore, so that it functions correctly. I think all of our dampers are happy, at least with no pedal attached. We've got this rod lowered, and one of the dampers was ringing. It's not ringing anymore. Everything's good as far as the dampers go. Now, it's time to try to attach this pedal. Here is the pedal, and I'm gonna screw this on. There should be a little bit of lost motion before the pedal actually pulls on the damper rod. So first I'm gonna screw it on here. All right, the pedal is now attached. I did have to adjust the lost motion of the pedal, and that's done with these two screws here, and then sliding the cable up a little higher so that when I screwed it on, it didn't pull on the rod at all. And there is just a little bit of lost motion. So I push the pedal, sustain pedal, and it does lift all the dampers off adequately and pretty evenly. This one here might be a little questionable, but let's give it a listen and see where it's at. I scraped off the felt that was on top of two of the problematic dampers, and I replaced it with some fresh felt that I had that was just a little thicker and fresher. And you can kind of see which ones I replaced, but at least it's red. And now it plays nice with the damper rod.